Hello everybody, John Wolf here. Today we're going to have another one of my automotive misadventures, as I like to call them. I've got the 2004 Ford Escape. Been getting an intermittent miss on it, so I'm going to change all 6 plugs and all 6 coils. We'll start out down here, unplug this vacuum line, unplug it from here, set it out of the way, and then we're going to take this cover off. Okay, for this cover we've got 3 8mm nuts, which this one's not going to come out. It's going to bring the stud out. It did the same thing to me the last time. We'll get it. I use my little grippers here because so I don't lose these little old bitty nuts. And sometimes it helps getting them off too. But there you go. That way you don't drop them down in the motor, or on the motor, or on the floor, or if you happen to be out in the grass, you don't lose them on the grass. So we'll put them in our little bucket. The other one, the stud, should have come loose, so yeah, it did. So there's that cover. Now the front 3 here, which 4, 5, and 6, are simple to change. I've got 3 more that are underneath the air plenum. So this has got to come off. And we'll be in that process here in just a minute. Next step is going to be to get our throttle linkage, or throttle cable, and our cruise control cable loose and out of the way. They're held on with 8mm nut or bolts. 2 on this bracket and 1 on the other one. Okay, and then to get the cables loose from the actual throttle section, which is simply pop off the cruise control cable, and then you can wrap the throttle cable around and just slip it out. And then we'll get this set out of the way. Okay, I'll be back with the next step. Okay, if you can see it, we've got a few vacuum lines to take loose, or a few more vacuum lines. That one and this one both just push off, and then I have to get some, well, I can do this one with my hand. There, got that one loose. Now I gotta get me a screwdriver to get this one loose. The only problem is I can't never remember where I put the screwdrivers. That's not exactly. Oh goodness, oh goodness. Okay, that went down in there. We will find that one. But still, we got our line loose. And if you can see them right here, we've got 2 plugs that need to come off of the air plenum. And they usually just pop off rather simply. That gets them out of the way. And we'll be back with another step here in just a minute. Okay, we've got 2 8mm bolts that hold this on, and part of the reason of taking these out is one of them holds the wiring harness for the PCM. So we don't want to move that around no more than what we absolutely have to. But for a big old fella, these are hard to get to. Oh, that one's a nut. About lost that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. Which this one is just a bolt. Okay, and that gets that loose and out of the way. Be a good time to inspect the vacuum lines going to that. Now that is all good and loose. Now next is going to be our EGR valve. Figure out a way of holding this back out of the way. Good. Okay, I'm not exactly sure on this EGR valve which is going to be the best way of getting it off, but I'm thinking it's going to be these two 8mm bolts here, this one and this one. Be back. If this works, be back with the next step. This is just a fun part of the video. Remember my screwdriver I dropped? My grippers retrieve it easily. Okay, if you happen to see a drop of blood on my hand or something, please don't worry about it. I take a blood thinner and, well, I take a daily aspirin and it thins your blood out, and it don't take but just a little touch to make you bleed. But you got this, got a couple of wires to take loose still, this one and one more down here on the, I guess it's the throttle valve or throttle body or whatever you want to call it on this one. I just can't think of the name of it. But they simply, you push in a little clip on them right here. Yeah, right there. Push in on the little clip and they slide right out. Take those two out, loosen this clamp up, and then you can work your filter tube loose. For not knowing what it's called, I just call it a filter tube. I'll probably take it loose on both ends. It seems to me like it's easier to do with both of them. And if you pry on something, just be careful, because man, some of these parts are rather expensive if you break them. So I got that side loose, and now I should be able to get this side loose. I hope. I'll be back when I get that off. Okay, just let's see, that might show it to you better. A little bit of twisting, got that little boot off. So now, at this point, we'll just look things over and see if there's anything else we need to take loose. And I don't see anything up in that area. So now we're gonna go for the 8mm bolts that hold the plastic plenum on. Okay, here goes to see if we get this thing out of here. And if I did miss anything. Ugh. And just take and lay it back out of the way. And that gives us access to cylinder 1, 2, and 3. And we will be taking them down here and taking all that off in just a minute. Now here's those rubber O-rings that I was telling you about. Right here's one of them. And the placement of them is in a little groove right here. Now at this point I'm going to be taking some bolts and stuff loose and moving them around. So I'm just going to lay some rags over top of these ventrals for the intake, just to keep from dropping anything down in them. Man, I'd hate to drop anything down and have to go into this motor. But okay, now we're going to start removing the spark plugs, and basically they're the same as those other clips I showed you. They've got a little push button right here. You push that down and it just slides, the electrical wire just slides right off very, very easily and out of the way. And then this whole job, just about all of it, can be done with an 8mm socket to this point. So I'm going to go ahead and take all the coils out. I'm going to do this one up here so you can actually see what I'm taking out. Well, things will stay out of our way. At least I hope you can see it. These usually come out fairly easy, but they're being a little stubborn right now. Okay, but this is what holds the coil in, right here. But you take that and simply lift the coil out. That's the coil system. 6 of them on this vehicle. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of them out, and I'll be back. Now we're going to work on removing the spark plugs. Now I use a socket that, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it actually lets the, or an extension that lets the socket swivel just a little bit. And hopefully that keep me from breaking any spark plugs. Holy cow. Boy, that one was tight. But I'll have these out in a minute and we'll inspect the plugs to see if we had a misfire on one of these cylinders. Okay, I thought that I would show you how I get these spark plugs out. I'm always talking about my handy little grippers. Well, I use them to pick the spark plugs up out of the holes. They really, I mean, these things, if you don't have these in your toolbox, you ought to. I'm not really going to say the name of the place, but a so hardware lumber company, chain lumber company. I got these for less than $5, and man, they've saved me a whole lot more than that in time. And we're going to look at the plugs now. That one looks fairly decent. Looks like it's been firing good. Looks good and clean. This one, a little bit of misfire been happening. You see a little discoloration in the ceramic on it. See how white that one is? That one's good. And this one also looks good. So we had one that looked like it might have been doing a little bit of misfiring. Okay, this being a 2004 V6 3.0, it calls for a gap in your plug of, right here, the gap between the electrode and the grounder of 52 to 56 thousandths. Well, this actually ends at 55 thousandths, which is going to be a good gap for it. So I've got that one gapped, and I'm going to try to work it in to where it doesn't touch anything, and see if we can get it started. Seems like it has. Okay, I'm going to get the other two in and I'll be back. Okay, once we get the plugs in place and snug down, just give them about 1/8 of a turn. This is aluminum heads on this engine. You do not want to over tighten them. Just about 1/8 of a turn is all it takes. And there your plugs are in place. Okay, now I got a little crazy this time, and I decided to get 3, or well actually all 6 brand new coils, because I'm tired of fighting with this thing. And it still didn't feel like it went on there right. Yeah, I guess it did. But basically, we just take and pull the new coil out of its package, make sure it lines up on the spark plug, and give her a little bit of a nudge down in there, and put a bolt in to hold it in place. Or nut, yeah, a bolt. Okay, at this point we go ahead and hook all of our electrical connections up, and that one is not clipping in good. Don't like the way it's doing, so I'm gonna put me a little zip tie around it. Okay, I just didn't like the way the plug-ins felt, so as a precaution I went ahead and zip tied the plugs together, just to make sure that in the future they don't come apart on me. And throw the plenum back on, and then get to work on the front side on the coils. Okay, on reinstalling the plenum, you want to wipe your surfaces down just to make sure there's no dirt and no grime on them, and that way you get a true seal. Not going to have any problems out of it that way. So wipe that down and wipe the plenum down, and in just a minute we're going to see if we can get it to go in place. Which we've got to make sure we get our EGR valve in the hole with the gasket still on, and make sure our gaskets stay on our plenum, and there we are. We feel like we're in place. We're close to it. It's a matter of getting our bolts all started and tighten back down. And I'll be back with you as soon as I get all these bolts tightened down. Okay, I don't have the actual torque specs on this, but or the torque sequence. Basically there's 8 bolts. I'm gonna go on a crisscross pattern from the inside to the outside, and we should be fine with that. And you know, they are some small bolts, so you don't want to over tighten them, but you do want to get them tight, just tight enough to where they're gonna stay in place. And now I'll go back and do just a little bit to make sure that all of them are tight. Check Make sure it's snug. You know, if they don't want to move fairly easy, then don't force them. Okay, first part of it is to run my EGR valve up. Get it back in place. Make sure you don't lose this gasket right here. There is a little O-ring gasket that goes in there. Man, this thing won't run right if you don't have that in place. But again, we have very small bolts to hold this, so we don't want to over tighten them. Now they do have to be tight enough to make sure the vibration doesn't vibrate them loose, but not over tighten them where you damage them. Okay, there's that. Now we put our little valve here. Okay, maybe, just maybe, you'll actually be able to see me putting this nut or bolt in. Okay. Now, it's supposed to be held on the other side with a stud, but the thing is broken, which it was when I started taking it apart the first time I ever did anything in here. So I just do the one and try to be careful and not break it. And then we get to play with trying to get the nut on back here. I'm going to replace the camera again and see if I can get that for you. Okay, hopefully you're going to be able to see this nut going on. But it's right there. Big old fumbly fingers me, can't hardly reach it. But I'm trying my best to do it to where you will be able to see what I'm doing. I mean, that's my whole point of this video, to try to help you get the placement of things. Make sure we replace our vacuum line on our EGR. And this vacuum line will lay across through there. We'll probably replace that one because that vacuum line looks bad. Okay, we'll be back with another bit in a minute. Now, the next step that I'm going to attempt is to get this air ventral back on, if I can. Try to get as much of this part put back together as possible. Okay, that's back in place. And we've got our two electrical plugs. We definitely don't want to forget them. I just hope you're able to see what I'm doing here. There's our two plugs. And then we're going to tighten our two clamps up right real quick. And 8mm is just about doing everything on this. I mean, the only thing it hasn't fit so far is the spark plugs. So we're doing good, I think. There's that. Okay. Now we'll just have to look it over inside here and see that everything is hooked back up. Get everything back in line, and it'll be good to go, I do believe. And right now what I'm doing is I'm starting to hook a few vacuum hoses back up. And I have to find that one, where it got to on me. That I don't know. Okay, I'll have to find that vacuum line and see what has happened to it. Be back. Okay, this vacuum line that I couldn't find is for the brake booster, and it was simply hid back here. So I'll slide it on, squeeze that clamp a little bit, and put it on like that. Now I've got one more vacuum line right here that I didn't like the looks of. Now I'm going to replace it with a little bit different color line. I'll take you through that process. Now, take it, this car is used. And, you know, this line was real soft, and I don't like soft lines. And I got to checking, and the previous owner has put a piece of copper tubing inside it to stiffen it up because it's a major vacuum line. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace it with a heavier, more sturdy line, which should not need the support of that in it. We'll just have to wait and see. But now, right here's what we do, or what I do, is stretch that line out, take my little coping saw, and I've got a nice straight cut. Now I'm going to see if I can put it in there. I may see if I can put the steel back in it, but I doubt it. Okay, I attempted to put their metal line back in, and I said, no, I don't think so. I'm just going to use it the way it should be used, put it on the way it should be put on, and see how it works out. And get my right distance on there, and pull my line on there, and I believe that I've got just enough to have me a good seal. So I'm going to go and start this thing to attempt to see how these cheap coils I purchased are going to work on the back set. Be right back with you. Well, actually what I decided I would do here, instead of starting it right now, is hook these cables back up. You know, it's very possible this thing just may need these cables to run, or not to rev out of sight. So, you know, basically, they're not that much to them. As I said before, just the throttle cable just loops through there. The passing, or the cruise control goes through there. Hook up your, put your 3 little bolts in to tighten up. Make sure this cable's in the slot like it's supposed to be, and we'll tighten them up, and it should be ready to go. Okay, I did a test fire on it, and it started up and ran nice and smooth. So now the rest of what I'm going to do is install the front 3 coils, put the cover back on. This job's going to be done. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of talking this time, because this is the same deal as the 3 in the back. It's just a little less work. You already know what I gotta do. What I'm gonna do at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show the whole process, but I'm gonna do it in fast motion until I get ready to put the plate on. Okay, on this first one, I'm going to slow it down just enough to say something I didn't on the back set. The service manual says to put a small amount of anti-seize around each plug. Okay, the front ones, the plug-ins are staying in place good. They're easy to get to, so I'm not going to do the zip ties on them. Now, with everything in place, now this line has to come back out for this. It gets in the way of putting this beauty plate on, as I call it. That's all it is, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll put this beauty plate back on it. And again, here goes my little grippers. They can get a grip on that little nut. Okay, we'll make sure this vacuum line is back in place. One final look over everything. Everything's good. Let's see if it'll start. Okay, it started. It seems to be running smooth at the higher RPM. Let's see. Okay, the idle is down somewhat. It's still running good. Glad you could join me on this. Hey, hopefully you'll like this video. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I do other stuff too. Come join me though. Let's get up off the couch. Let's do something. Let's get some grime under our fingernails. Hopefully I'll see y'all in the next video.